for well-being and future energy needs. That's what we'll be debating tonight with our guests, for and against, and our live studio audience.
Wind farms and wind turbines have been part of Ireland's landscape for more than 20 years, with relatively little controversy. Till now. In the last year, as the planned expansion of renewable energy goes deeper and deeper into communities, battle lines have been drawn, and depending on which side you're on, it's either a new industry which will create countless jobs.
This is an industry that grows and grows and grows. We could be the renewable energy hub of Europe.
Or the collateral damage from turbines is not worth the economic benefits.
The solution is to move away from the problem, because they're not going away and they're not going to turn them off.
Ireland is obliged by Europe to more than double its renewable energy by 2020. Now this is going to mean a lot more wind farms and a lot more wind turbines. And the question is, will the energy industry manage to win over the rural community who are already very concerned about the size of these proposed wind turbines and the proximity to their homes?
The sector recognises that for us to deliver our potential, hosting wind farms has to be done with the collaboration of communities. And there are real families being supported by real jobs in the sector today, and if we look at the numbers that are employed, effectively what you're talking about is the equivalent of Intel, but those jobs spread right around the country.
Ireland is committed to sourcing 40% of its electricity from renewable sources within 7 years. At present there are almost 1,200 turbines across the whole island of Ireland, with more than 2,500 people working in the industry. The Irish Wind Energy Association estimates that more than 1,000 more turbines will be built for the 2020 target, which they believe will provide work for as many as 10,000 people. And the cost of upfront investment runs to billions of euro. Building transmission lines and the necessary interconnectors to Britain could cost 3.5 billion. The cost of varying conventional backup generation is unknown, but may amount to hundreds of millions more. And there is the unknown size of the liability that electricity customers have taken on by guaranteeing to buy the power of wind generators into the future at a set price. Mike and Dorothy Keane moved to Skryne in Roscommon in 2004. It was to be another 7 years before any wind turbines would be built near their home.
We didn't object at that time to the turbines, and then when it went to Bord Pleanála, we didn't make a submission. We had no issues then with wind turbines and wind energy.
What did you first notice from the turbines?
Noise. Noise was the first thing we noticed.
Yeah. The external noise, when you're out and around the garden or the land, whatever, we've decided to put up with it. But the problem is that the noise started to follow us indoors almost. And as time went on, we realised that we couldn't rest in our home, we couldn't sleep properly in our home, we couldn't enjoy our home indoors.
In recent months, the couple took the decision to move to Leitrim to get away from the effect of nearby turbines. How do you feel about leaving your home?
Terrible.
If we were devastated. We try and put on a brave face and make the best of. The new home we've bought is a lovely house, it's a lovely place, but it's not home. Home is here.
As the amount of turbines in Ireland increases, so too will the proximity to people's homes, and campaigners want the recommended separation distance from turbine to home to be increased from the present 500 metres to 1,500 metres, a change which the industry claims will destroy it. Another concern for people is shadow flicker, which happens when the sun shines through the blades of the turbine, as recorded here in a Donegal home. Do you believe that people get depressed or that people can't sleep because of turbines being within 500 metres of their home or within 1,000 metres of their home?
I think it's really important that people have a discussion and a debate about it, but the discussion and the policy issues should be based on facts. there is no evidence in Ireland or in Europe or internationally to suggest or outline that people should be concerned about noise, shadow flicker, which is something that can be technically corrected. But there's no reason for communities to be concerned. And as I've mentioned, there are many communities and families right across the country that are not concerned.
Just over a year ago, plans were announced to develop wind farms across 5 Midland counties, here in Westmeath, Offaly, Laois, Kildare and Meath. Now these plans involve erecting over 1,000 wind turbines, all to create energy solely for export to the UK grid. The UK is committed to sourcing 5,000 megawatts from Ireland by 2020. Element, through the company Greenwire, and Mainstream hope to be the main providers of this through a mixture of onshore and offshore turbines. This enormous wind project will be connected directly to the British grid, involving no subsidy or price guarantees from the Irish electricity customers. But the plan to erect more than 200 turbines in Westmeath solely for export to the UK grid hasn't gone down well with some in the community.
They're getting packed halls in local villages. You're talking about maybe around 100 people and that sort of thing. In the larger venues, standing room only. It's very hard for wind farm protesters not to understand the position of landowners. I mean, it's very hard to stand up and say we're against something that the landowners say is worth 18,000 per annum per turbine to them. So there is a very strongly divided opinion, but I wouldn't think it would be fair to say that the community is divided over it.
Inevitably, a wage or a payment is going to make some people more accepting of turbines, while others are going to find them a bit too overbearing and a bit too close to home.
Kevin Burns reporting there. I'm now joined here in studio by Eamon Ryan, leader of the Green Party, Eddie O'Connor, who's the CEO of Mainstream Renewable Power, by Henry Fingleton, chairperson of People Over Wind, and David Horgan, MD of Petrel Resources. First of all, Eddie O'Connor, would you like to have a turbine beside your home?
I would if I could afford to have one in Dublin, but you can't have one in Dublin because it's just the density of population. Oh yeah, I mean, I'd love to have a wind turbine. I'd like to be doing my bit for the environment. I'd love to be creating wealth in this country. I'd love to be creating, genuine wealth, which is employment, profits, chance for people to invest.
What if there was a turbine beside your home in the countryside in Ireland, and you wanted to sell it and you couldn't sell it?
Well, I'd have to wonder where you got that notion from, that you can't sell your house. I mean, there's been a definitive study done recently by the Lawrence Berkeley Library in the United States which showed there was no correlation between the value of your house. And in fact, in Ireland, if you look at where the value has fallen, the value of houses has fallen more in Westmeath and Laois than in Donegal and Kerry. Donegal has 330 turbines, Kerry has 250 or something like that, and the value of houses has fallen less there.
But you're taking the entire county, Eddie, to be fair. And actually, Kevin Burns, who made that film, spoke to a number of people, including Mike and Dorothy Keane, and many people told him, in his research as a reporter, that they couldn't sell their houses.
Well, if you don't believe you can sell your house, you probably can't. And if your auctioneer is telling you can't sell your house, well, you probably can't, or probably don't want to because you're afraid of it. But the facts do not bear out. I mean, Schleswig-Holstein in Germany has got a vast array of turbines. I think it's probably got 7,000 or 8,000 turbines in a place the size of not even as big as Munster, and yet the value of property there is at its
Henry
peak.
Fingleton, you're against turbines. Why?
Well, we're not against wind energy and we're not against renewables, but there's a huge issue with what's planned for the Midlands. If these plans went ahead, we would be looking at 130 wind farms spread over 5 counties. So I think it's important to understand the sheer scale of what we're talking about. This is not regular scale. Those turbines, by our estimate, will end up with 7,000 families living in, under or beside a wind farm. So that's 7,000 families. That's the population of a town like Portlaoise or Mullingar or Tullamore living in that situation.
But Eddie would probably say, no, assuming this as you say this, that's not a problem, and frankly it's not going to affect the property prices.
Well, I think we heard the Keane speaking, and they represent a lot of people, and it is a problem. It's a huge problem. It's the property prices. If you take a whole county, you dilute the effect of the property value close to the turbine. The study that Eddie just quoted, the LB study, that showed that within 1 mile of a wind turbine or a wind farm, your property dropped by 28%. Fact.
Eddie?
Not so. That's
It's in the report.
Yeah, well...
And two other reports. A Tipton County report found that the fall was between 25 and 50%. An RCS report from the UK found that within 1.5 miles, the drop was about 25%. So there are a lot of reports which say that your property will drop in value. And in fact, even not looking at reports, if you ask a 9-year-old child, common sense would tell you that if you build a huge turbine beside a house, that house will be worth less.
We've got 1,200 of them in Ireland at the moment. And how come that we haven't had any complaints except for the people that we saw sizes here? I mean, there must be probably what, 25,000 people in Ireland living beside or in relative proximity to wind turbines.
Well, we
and
have an audience here, and the half of those are against them for the reasons you just mentioned. Eamon Ryan, are you saying within your entire political career, no one's ever come to you complaining about a turbine?
No, particularly recently, and we've been talking to different groups, trying to get industry and people who have a concern together to see can we work this through. And the reason we need to do that is that we have a huge opportunity in this country. There's a clean energy revolution happening across the world, people moving towards renewables, wind power, solar power. And we have the benefit of having some of the best resources. And what if we can turn them on? It gives us clean, competitive, secure power forever.
But that sounds great. But if you have a turbine behind your home and you're not benefiting economically from what you're saying, why should that person in that house care?
Yeah, we have to listen to that person, and we have to make sure that there is community gain, that the benefits to this accrue to a very wide range of people. 2 or 3 ways that can happen.
But you just ignore the people, just because it's supposed it is critical. There was an Economist survey out just last week which showed that over 80% of people are totally for wind energy. But when you ask them, did they want a turbine near their home, it went down to almost 40%.
We need to get the planning right. But the other thing we have to take into account, that what this industry brings, when you have that source of clean power, other industries come. Because other digital industries, biomedical, pharmaceutical, they need a clean power supply and a competitive power supply. And we have the chance to deliver that. So we need to do 2 or 3 things, if I can briefly. We have to first of all make sure that any generation that is built, that trades with the UK, also connects into the Irish market, that we have the ability to connect it in so we can balance our power supply. Secondly, that we have community gain. And I think that we pull in companies like Bord na Móna and Coillte, who've got a long experience about developing energy resources.
Can I just say one thing? If it's such a great idea, for instance, the Midlands, how come Britain, how come they're sending their turbines to us? If it's such a great idea, why don't the English people want it in their countryside?
They are.
There's 65, I know, there's 65 million people over there, and they've built a lot more turbines.
But why are they coming here to pump them?
Well, because there's a population density of 7 times greater than ours. So, you know, if you apply the same planning criteria over there as here, you find you just can't build any more in rural England.
It's incredibly difficult to plant a turbine in England at the moment. They write reams about the planning there.
One of the reasons is because we are a windy country. We have got strong wind.
Sorry, Murray.
That is
okay, let me just.
Can I just take up 1 or 2 points of them?
Well, can I just bring in David and then I could go?
Yeah. Well, everyone's for progress as long as it doesn't involve change. But what disturbs many citizens is the quasi-religious fervour of the wind lobby. At the one hand, they're saying they're very competitive and this is a clean, free source of electricity. On the other hand, they're looking for special treatment. And beware of industry insiders when they're telling you something that's in their best interest is also in your interest, particularly if they're seeking to charge more rather than less for a less reliable form of energy.
But with respect, David, you would say this, wouldn't you? Because you are obviously promoting your company, Petrel, which is the complete opposite of renewable energy.
Actually, not at all. I'm very worried about the current situation of the oil market. There's a constraint on supply, demand is soaring in the world. I think there's a big upside risk to the oil price.
And for that reason, it's not for ideological reasons, it's that reason we need to switch on the alternative power supply, because we know that gas and oil are going to become more expensive.
No, I agree
and we know as well, David, if I might say it, that there's some 3,400 people die early or die each year because of the air pollution from burning fossil fuels. So it's not ideology that wants to switch it off. It's going to save lives.
Before I bring both of them,
just create employment.
If it's such a great idea, then Eamon, why the level of subsidies? Why is it the electricity customer who's taking the hit?
We don't have a subsidy in Ireland because our wind is significant. It's not the same in Germany and elsewhere.
We have a price guarantee.
Yes, but we don't actually use it. Most of the price subsidy goes to peat-fired power stations. We need to switch them off and switch on wind power. And some of the Midland areas where where the peat has been cut, we can go onto that land, we can put in wind turbines, use the grid that is there
But all the
already.
risk is being taken by the customer. Many customers will say that, not the generator, not the people like your companies with respect, Eddie.
Well, Miriam, I'm delighted that you brought that up because in electricity, we built up 40,000 customers in Ireland without any subsidy from the state. And we sold that electricity at a price 10% less than the ESB were selling. So we didn't need any subsidy, we didn't have any. In South Africa right now, they're building 2 coal-fired power stations, and they did a survey on the price of coal-fired electricity. One was 0.99 rand, the latest wind is 0.89 rand, and the latest solar is 0.9 rand. So wind and solar are actually
So should
cheaper
Irish
than coal.
generators not get a price guarantee? Is that what you're saying?
Well, you can't compare. Moneypoint
No, that's a straight question.
Well, it's a straight question, but Moneypoint was built 25 years ago.
So you're saying
Moneypoint is now fully
they should get the
depreciated.
price
You can't
guarantee.
compare a fuel that you pay for with a fuel that's free, because we will always win on price comparison.
You want to come in there for
Yes,
1 minute, Henry, then I'll go to my audience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the reality on the ground is that the Danish, who have the highest wind penetration in Europe, pay 30 cent a unit for electricity. We pay 20, so they pay half again. The Germans
because of tax, not because of wind.
Subsidies.
Sorry.
Let me finish my point. I didn't
Let him
interrupt you
finish
there.
for
Let me
1
finish my
second,
point.
Eddie Naaman.
Last week in Germany, the BDI, which is an organisation that represents
Bring it in.
100,000 businesses in Germany, including the likes of Volkswagen and Siemens, came out and said to Angela Merkel, in your first 100 days in office, you need to stop subsidising wind because it is making us uncompetitive. We are losing industry. Wind energy makes electricity expensive, and that is
There was a major study published last week in Europe, and it showed that if we come together and swap power between countries, Germany and Britain and Denmark and Ireland and France,
But how
we will
practical
save.
is that, Eamon?
It's very
How
practical.
practical?
The
When
cables
might
are
it
not there.
happen?
It is happening.
So we will become
We opened a new
Europe's
cable
offshore wind
last
farm.
year. It is there. It is happening now.
Yes.
This is, and what it does is it reduces the bill to European taxpayers by 40 billion. So that is the way forward. It's sharing and trading. And through trading with the UK, we have a more secure power supply.
I'm going to come back to my
because at
panel. I
the
just want to
moment,
bring my audience.
If I'm just finish the point, at the moment, all
Quickly,
our energy
Eamon.
supplies is imported from the UK.
Peter
So the more we
Crossan.
trade with them, the more secure we are
Peter
for every piece of
Crossan,
energy.
what's your position on this?
Well, my position on it is that we do subsidise wind, and very much so. And I'd like to hear from Eamon why we paid 141 million last year to the wind industry for periods when the wind was too strong and they had closed down their wind farms, and why another 300 million went in subsidisation or in support to this industry. The industry has always recognised and admitted itself, in my experience over the years, that it can't get by without subsidisation or without supports. And this idea that we can export energy and connect up all over Europe is absolutely nonsense. You know, I'd ask the question, how much are we getting from the installed capacity of wind on the grid right now? We're on average 4 or 5% a day. We can't predict it. It's intermittent, Eamon, and you know it well. We debated this issue many years ago.
Today was an average about 20%, and most of last week was up to around 40, 50%. And you're right what you say, that there's a current cost on our current system of having to turn off wind farms sometimes because we've got so much wind power.
Do you know what it'll be tomorrow?
We had 14%
yes,
at
I've a fair
1:30
idea.
today.
You can actually forecast ahead very, very closely.
Okay.
Just one last point. The benefit connecting to the UK is that we can use their system against ours and balance, and you get a saving on both sides of the Irish Sea, and that's why it makes sense, economic sense.
A 20% return over the last week or today, that's a very small return for the considerable investment that's going into it. And you're asking communities to take a hell of a hit. My worry isn't necessarily about property prices. My worry is more to do with the sustainability of this, the actual security of the resource.
Okay,
Every day, if I can, one last point. One last point. Every day the wind blows, we import 1/3 million less of gas in cash we keep in the country.
Niall McMahon in the front, I want to bring you in as well, yeah?
Yeah, so I'm the director of the Centre for Renewable Energy in Dundalk IT. You know, so we're I'm a little partisan maybe, but we're not aligned. I suppose my position, I mean, if you look at 2012, you know, wind provided a minimum of 10% per month, you know, to the grid, up to a maximum about 20% per month. You know, Eamon Ryan, I think, put his finger out. The most important thing is that gas is running out. You know, so gas is going to run out. It's going to get more expensive, and the world is getting warmer. We need renewables. It needs to be done the right way. I mean, I think this debate, I was talking to some people earlier, and, you know, it's become polarised unnecessarily.
Yeah, okay, Avril Twist, you have a personal story, don't you, Avril?
Yeah, My family and I live in the middle of Laois. We spent 10 years, more than 10 years, looking for the home where we now live. We sit on the side of a hill looking out over an absolute spectacular view of 7 counties, uninterrupted. And on the 1st of August, planning permission went in for 8 wind turbines, and one of them is going to be 640 metres from my front door. I'm 50 metres higher than the base of it, so I'm going to be looking into 103 metres tip to tip turbines going round, and that covers approximately 4¼ acres. And that's not going to devalue my home. That's not going to endanger my family's health, their future and their inheritance. The ordinary person in Ireland is struggling to pay their bills, to pay their mortgages and everything else. And I agree, wind farm is great. It's a free energy, fantastic. But don't do it at the detriment of the ordinary person. And the ordinary person is the person that's keeping this country going.
Okay, we're bringing Eddie in that, I suppose, the
well,
distance.
Health, I mean, there's no evidence at all that health is damaged by wind turbines. This is one of the biggest studied topics around the world right now, because the most common form of generation put in the globe right now, apart from China, is actually wind turbines. In America, in Chile, in South Africa, in England and Ireland, in Germany and Denmark, well, Denmark offshore. So what you're looking at here is a global phenomenon of intense study. Nobody gets sick from wind, except that you tell people they're going to get sick and then they get sick.
What about the distance, though, Alva's going to be fair? What would be a fair distance, do you think, for a turbine to be positioned from a house?
Well, 500 metres is the current guidelines, and that seems fair.
And Miriam, those guidelines were brought in the 80s.
1 second, David, I'll bring you back.
Those guidelines were brought in the 80s when turbines were 50 metres tall. Just to get a concept of this, these turbines are the spire with Liberty Hall on top. They are truly enormous, and they're saying it is acceptable to put those 500 metres from a person's house.
Can I come back for one moment?
What's so funny?
I'm
going to be sitting in my house and have to close the curtains. Excuse me, if you could just listen to me?
Yeah.
Just for 1 second. It's not funny.
Exactly.
I am struggling to pay a mortgage every month, and this is going to be a monstrosity in front of my home because it is so close to my home. Wind turbines are beautiful and they're fantastic, but put them in the right places.
Okay, the gentleman in the front row with the red tie, yeah.
My name's Kevin O'Donoghue. I work for Element Power, who's developing the Green Wire project in the Midlands, which consists of 40 wind farms being developed across the Midlands. Which is going to bring benefit to thousands of families, and very important to keep that in mind across the Midlands. But I suppose we've done a lot of work consulting with people recently, and what's very noticeable here is we developed projects in places like Kerry 15 years ago, and we had the exact same concerns in those areas expressed by people that we're seeing now in the Midlands. And today Kerry has 375 turbines granted planning permission, hundreds operating, over 500 people working in the wind industry based in Kerry, no impact on tourism, no impact on property values. And I think it's very important that we as an industry work with the people in the Midlands to give all the information and explain fully what's involved in turbines.
But you can hear there's a lot of nervousness. I mean, even just Avro 2 seats away.
It's very important, and as I say, we've seen this in other parts of the country before, and we're working very hard as an industry, I think, to explain and understand, get people to understand the benefits of it.
Let me bring Judy Scully. You're in the back row there, Judy, yeah.
Yes, just Eddie O'Connor, just interestingly, 6 weeks ago in Lee County in America, 60 residents started a lawsuit against the county and Ireland-based mainstream renewable power. Now, interestingly, what they cited over there is this action is necessary to save the value of our homes and farms. The construction of so many turbine towers in this populated and farming area will cause very lasting damage. That rings very true with me. I'm a farmer's wife, 4 young children living in a rural area in Jamestown in County Laois. Everywhere I will drive and go with my children will have turbines. Every corner will have them. Pat Rabbit should be sitting there tonight and should be answering questions on this topic and not sending someone who's an ex-minister out to stand up and defend this policy.
Well, actually, he didn't send him, to be fair.
In fairness, he's here. And he's no longer, you know, we have no government voice in this. Our government are telling us that this is European policy, local policy, and we're being told we will get used to these turbines. We'll get used to looking at them. Like these said, like the people of Cork and Kerry, you just get used to them. I'm sorry, I can't see myself getting used to 185
can I bring you in there? Pat Finnegan, what about those points? I think you would be quite pro wind energy, wouldn't you, Pat?
Well, I believe we have a major problem with fossil fuels, and I'm not alone in that any longer. We need to get out of them. Simultaneously, I think the sensible thing is to play to our strengths. And as a couple of panellists and a few others have mentioned, all of us here in Ireland are essentially walking around every day and night, if we happen to be out at night, with free fuel blowing onto our noses all the time.
Why is our electricity bill going up constantly?
The answer to that question is also on my mind, because I think we're also in the evolutionary phase here, and what is beginning to happen is you're getting a community-based perspective to this, whereby the benefits from the electricity are shared with the community, and I think we need much more of that.
Okay, now I'm going to go to the audience in a moment. I just want to say one thing. A lot of the benefits that people who are very pro wind energy would say is that it will create a lot of jobs. So although there are the downsides that Avril and other people are speaking about, the plus is there'll be a lot of jobs out there.
Yeah, Miriam, the jobs figures have been bandied about like confetti. The reality is that wind energy does not create many jobs. If anybody goes to a wind farm, even a very large one, you will notice that there are no employees there. Certainly there are some backroom staff. But we have to measure this against what jobs are being lost in the economy because of more expensive power. And that's why the Germans want to peel back on their subsidies to wind, because they realise they're going to lose industry. And that's a key factor. But bringing it back to the point this gentleman made about engaging the community have not been engaged. 2,000 farmers have been signed up before any consultation took place, any consultation whatsoever. They have railroaded this into the community, and that is why there are 30 groups formed in the Midlands in 10 months. That's a group every 10 days. A group forming in the Midlands every 10 days. That's a huge groundswell, because the companies have not engaged, they have railroaded.
The jobs are in construction, they're not ongoing jobs for the most part, and they're relatively low paid. So this isn't an economic miracle for us. No one's saying that there's not a role for wind, but it's not the panacea. And what you're hearing from the wind lobby is really a religious argument. What you want is transparency in pricing and a balance of sources of energy and routes to market. There's no source of energy without risks and costs.
Okay, Eddie, and then I'll go back to the audience.
Yeah, well, the fossil fuel industry is going to put that argument, and they ignore this the devastation of climate change. And I'm not surprised that somebody from Petrol will make this point. But the fact is that in Germany, they do not have anything like the wind. And each person in Germany pays a subsidy, each domestic consumer pays a subsidy of 5.3 cents on the kilowatt hour. But industry in Germany gets the cheapest power from wind energy, because the marginal cost is zero. Now, the real thing that we have to ask ourselves here is, if we're going to have Europe supplied mainly by wind energy and solar in 2050, and these two countries here, Ireland and England, are going to be able to supply most of that, don't tell me that there won't be 8 jobs for every megawatt that we build here in our seas and in the North Atlantic and on land.
And then I'm going back to my audience, because they all want to get in.
The figures are just not born. There is no evidence for this. In Germany, they're just plucking the figures out of the sky. I mean, Eddie spoke about 75,000 jobs a year ago in the wind industry, just plucked from the sky.
No, sorry, we multiplied the number of megawatts. So it said 40,000 jobs multiplied by 8.
The figures are non-existent.
Sorry, in Germany that's the case, and in Denmark that's the case, and in Spain that's the case.
They're manufacturing.
Okay, let me go to the gentleman.
Yes,
Eddie, the man in the back row with the beard, moustache. Yeah, keep going. Yeah.
Brendan McGrath from AK Electric. Yeah. 2 points I'd like to make. One in relation to the comments that were made earlier. My company raised 65 million to develop our wind farms at the end of last year. We raised that in Sweden and in Germany. And the reason that we raised it, and the reason that people were prepared to invest in Ireland, and this is money coming into Ireland, the reason that they were prepared to do that was because the market here, in terms of the price of power, is matched to the market. They were afraid to go into some countries where the subsidy for wind was or for solar was at a level that if the government withdrew the subsidy, that they would lose out. So they came to Ireland on the basis that the price that's paid for wind is matched to the market today. So that's one point.
But it's also guaranteed price by the Irish electricity customer.
The second point I'd like to make, because my company was associated with the film that you showed up there in relation to the Keens. Gaelectric own 2 turbines in Skryne. We got planning for those in 2005. We commissioned that plant in 2011. We engaged with the Keans in relation to measuring noise in their home. We did that to comply with best practice in relation to measurement of wind. At that stage, there were no complaints. For 12 months, there was no complaints from the Keans in relation to the wind. In November, December of last year, they started to complain about the wind. At an operational meeting, people came back to me and said we had a problem in relation to the Keans in terms of wind.
Yeah, and they're upset about it now, as you can see.
And they've had their say. I'm entitled to my say. We engaged with the Keans in relation to establishing whether there was a problem in relation to wind around their house. We offered to do further tests with them in relation to appointing 2 consultancy companies to work in tandem with them over a period of time, whereby we would measure the wind, they would keep a diary, we would relate the wind, the running of the turbines.
I can't keep talking about this point all night, but you've answered it now.
I want to make a final point.
Very quickly,
we made that offer to them in March. We haven't heard from them since.
Fine. Can I briefly just respond to the lady in the audience who said, okay, what's the Green Party's interest in this? One of the interests we have is trying to bring community and this revolution together in terms of that the gain to the community is real, and that we listen to people whose houses are threatened or feel, and that we move turbines if needs be, and that we don't miss this opportunity. And there's a chance in the next year. Nothing is planned, nothing is set, nothing is arranged, nothing is actually detailed plans. We have a chance in this country, if we get this right, to actually listen to those who have a concern and try and meet it, and to try at the same time grab the opportunity that exists, because there's no better project that could lift this country. There's no better project that could create employment in the Midlands and in the West and in the Northwest, and that's where we need to create jobs.
Joe Osborne, every hand is up in this audience. We could run for another. Can I just ask Joe Osborne where, because in your point, I know Joe.
To bring the dialogue back to talking about attracting industries and employment, the thoroughbred industry, which I represent as the Breeders' Association chairman, employs 17,000 people in rural Ireland, a lot of them in the counties which are affected by this latest proposal. That is under direct threat by these turbines. It's the scale of them, it's the size of them. We're an industry that depends on inward investment.
Why, Joe? Briefly, why is it on?
We depend on inward investment, and that boils down to the aesthetics of the environment. People are not going to buy a stud farm, a training yard next to a turbine. I can guarantee that. Also, there's a health and safety issue. There's a health and safety issue. People who I've spoken to are not going to ride the skittish thoroughbreds underneath a turbine. They're not going to walk a horse underneath these turbines with shadow, with noise. There are serious health and safety concerns for our members.
Eddie, a quick word here.
I just don't accept that at all. I mean, why would people stop investing in stud farms on account of wind turbines? I mean, the electricity will be cheaper in 10 years' time because we don't know what the price of gas or oil or coal is going to be then.
Henry?
And on top of Joe's point, not only do we use our landscape and our environment for our thoroughbred industry, we also use it to grow and market our food, which is a huge industry. We also use it for our tourism. And Eamon misses the point completely. What he's talking about is us being Europe's offshore wind farm. And our wind resource is not greater than Europe's. It's certainly not greater than the whole north half of England. So this vision of Ireland producing lots of wind energy for the UK is not as sustainable. It's not in line with our core values and the core things we're good at, which is based around our landscape, which will be devastated by this.
In the same way 50 years ago that Whittaker saw that we had a comparative advantage in growing grass, and we turned it into a food industry which is now a €9 billion industry.
Grass is that height.
We have the opportunity here to turn the comparative advantage of having resources into power for this country that will exist for generations to come.
You cannot compare grass that grows to about 10 inches high with 185 metre turbines.
It's the comparative
and you said a second ago,
Yeah, Eddie, you have to listen to people. It's clear that the regulations are outmoded. I'm not against your industry, but You
Sorry,
shouldn't
listen,
be
we've
afraid
gone
to
out and we've
learn. You
talked
shouldn't
to
be afraid to
2,000
listen.
people at their doorsteps. Don't accuse us of not talking to people, please. You don't know what you're
Your body
on.
language says it, Eddie.
Listen, sorry, who says it?
Your body language says that you know more than them.
No, well, okay, I'm sorry about
It's up
that.
to, it's
I
up to
don't
you
want
and
to
us to earn the trust of the community.
Can I just say something? This debate could go on. Every hand is up here. I'm really sorry. I have run out of time. I give you my word. I'm going to insist to my editor we come back to this, okay? Thank you to my panellists. Thank you to all my audience. That's it for tonight. The next News on RTE is coming up right after this programme on News Now. We're here tomorrow night with a live studio audience. If you want to be in that or on any other Tuesday night, just email us to primetimeaudience@rte.ie or telephone Dublin 01 208 3494. For now, from everyone on the programme, thank you very much for watching and good night. I would have brought you. Very sorry.